Despite being in a semi-professional league just 2 years ago, Wrexham have achieved back-to-back-to-back promotions to the Championship. Now, if you know anything about the club, you might think there are 2 reasons for this. The money from their wealthy Hollywood owners and the money from their hit Welcome to Wrexham documentary series. But the reality is actually a bit more complicated than that. So, just how have Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds made Wrexham work as a business? Now, you might think, well, Wrexham get their money from their Hollywood owners, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney actually bought Wrexham in 2021 for £1 from the Supporters Trust on the proviso that they would inject at least £2 million into the club. Within their first 5 months of ownership, they provided £2.2 million in equity funding, and by the time promotion from the National League had been achieved in 2023, the duo's direct funding of the club topped £12 million. But this kind of investment can only take Wrexham so far. Yes, Reynolds and McElhenney have immense personal wealth, but this dwarves in comparison to the billionaires and nation-states that occupy the upper end of the football pyramid. And Wrexham's owners understand this. Therefore, plans have begun to raise funds from elsewhere in the future. When Reynolds and McElhenney bought the club, they did so via the R.R. McReynolds Company, LLC, of which they are both 50% shareholders. But during Wrexham's League 2 season, in 23-24, they transferred all of their shares to a new holding company, Wrexham Holdings LLC, seemingly in anticipation of selling minority stakes in the club to prospective investors. The first of those sales happened between June 2023 and April 2024, when the pair sold 5% of Wrexham Holdings to a US consortium fronted by Al Tylis and Sam Porter. Then, in September 2024, a further 10% of the club was sold to Red Dragon Ventures. That company is partly owned by Reynolds and McElhenney, but majority owned by the American billionaire Allen family, who became minority investors in Wrexham the next month. Across the 24-25 League 1 season, a total of £28.7 million in equity was raised. £15 million of that went towards paying off loans due to R.R. McReynolds, while the remaining £13.7 million has been used to fund operations, including an increased wage bill, heightened transfer fees, and building a new cop stand at Wrexham's Racecourse Stadium. Future minority stake sales look likely after the club's strategic report stated, quote, "Further partners would be considered if they can add value and assist in the delivery of our objectives." But wealthy benefactors investing into a club is not always a guarantee of future success. There are countless teams in the English football pyramid who've had bad investors pour money in, only to be left with a huge void when they depart or run out of money themselves. What makes Wrexham's financial rise different from those cases, though, is their unprecedented commercial income. The club have seen an uptick in gate receipts and broadcast income since Reynolds and McElhenney came in, but Wrexham's proportion of commercial revenue to total revenue was by far the highest in the country last season, at 74%. Altogether, Wrexham's commercial revenues in 23-24 were £19.7 million, a figure that outstripped 5 Premier League clubs, despite the fact that they were in League 2 that season. Now, you might think this is solely as a result of the documentary series, but by the club's own admission, they don't actually make any direct financial return from the documentary. Instead, the exposure that the club can offer brands through the series has been leveraged to secure separate, lucrative commercial deals. Those deals exploded during their first season back in the EFL, with commercial income up 213% on 22-23. The primary drivers were a front-of-shirt sponsorship deal with United Airlines, reportedly worth as much as £6 million per season, and the stadium naming rights deal with Stock Cold Brew Coffee, also worth 7 figures. Other club sponsors now include HP, MetaQuest and Gatorade, while companies owned by Reynolds' wife Blake Lively and McElhenney's fellow It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia stars have added to the top line. Now, doing it this way ensures more solid foundations for Wrexham's future commercial income too. If the club was solely dependent on Welcome to Wrexham, then they would be in serious trouble if the show were cancelled tomorrow. But signing separate deals protects them against that. There is, of course, the fear that this is solely dependent on the involvement of Reynolds and McElhenney. 52% of Wrexham's commercial income comes from outside Europe, which is pretty much unheard of. But the club are going to extreme lengths to build their own brand separate from their A-list owners. United Airlines, the front-of-shirt sponsor, debuted Wrexham-themed pyjamas in their premium cabins on a select number of long-haul international flights in the summer of 2024. While Stock Cold Brew Coffee recorded a Super Bowl halftime commercial featuring the Wrexham squad and Channing Tatum. And the future looks pretty bright too, from a financial perspective. The Athletic estimates that the club could lose £34 million in the Championship next season and still remain PSR compliant, leaving space to grow further. Securing a jump up to the Premier League, though, would be the most enthralling, albeit expensive, part of their story so far.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insight on every Premier League football story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.